Hello, welcome back to You Are My Boro. Myself, Dom Shaw, and Scott Wilson, both of the Northern Echo. And I suspect this video will be a bit more upbeat than we were last week when we were looking back on the Sunderland defeat and ahead to the Stoke game. And it's another example of what a we know, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, it's what a difference a week can make, isn't it? I mean, you know, the Stoke game, which you were at, was always going to be, you know, a big one just in terms of kind of resetting the narrative and everything. And that felt like an important step forward. And then West Brom on Tuesday night, where I was at, felt like a pretty big leap forward, I thought. Really, really good. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into it, but Boro's best display of the season, I don't think there's any doubt about that. I mean, you can say Leeds in the Carabao Cup, but obviously that, you know, that was the Carabao Cup. There were changes left, right, and centre, etc., etc. In terms of a game that really mattered in the league against a side who I do think will be up there challenging for a promotion, I thought Boro were really, really good in the week. And like you say, that, you know, in the space of 7 days, the dial has shifted massively. And if Boro can go to Watford and get another win on Saturday, then all of a sudden you're heading into this international break with, and you know, the wind absolutely in your sails.
Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already on YouTube. Thanks to those who have already. Those subscriber numbers have shot up in the last few weeks, so we're really grateful for that. And as we say every week, just give us a shout in the comments or get in touch with either of us on social media if there's anything you want us to discuss. I know it's not transfers. Sorry, the transfer window isn't open, so there isn't transfers to discuss, but we'll do a Q&A at some point in the next few weeks. So if there's anything you want us to...
Probably in the international break would make sense.
Yeah, we'll need something to get us
We'll need something to talk about, yeah, exactly.
And if you're listening on your podcast platforms, then rate and review on there as well. I've seen a few reviews on there pop up in the last few weeks, which are really appreciated as well. What's changed then, Scott, in the last week? Because we look back on that Sunderland game and there was plenty to not worry about, but plenty of issues to discuss, I guess. Now, Michael Carrick will have undoubtedly disagreed with that, and he played down those concerns ahead of the Stoke game. His press conference last Thursday, I thought, was really good, really balanced, kind of aware of the issues that were holding Boro back, but pointing to the positives and pointing to the fact that he was certain Boro would find a way. Well, finding a way, I don't think does Boro's wins justice, really, in the last week. It feels like there's been more than that.
So, in some respects, what's changed? Not very much. And that's the Michael Carrick way. You know, this hasn't been a case of ripping everything up, because that is just not Carrick. We saw it last season when things were way, way worse than they've been, you know, so far this season. That Michael Carrick is not going to fundamentally change the way he sets his team up, the way he wants his Middlesbrough side to play. You know, yes, he'll make personnel changes along the way, but he's not going to drop 6 or 7 players just because he doesn't think they're doing it. You know, none of that is the Carrick way. That said, I do think there has been a few little important changes. I think the return of Riley McGree and the promotion of Ben Doak ahead of Isaiah Jones has unquestionably freshened up what Boro have been doing in the wide positions. I think Doak is at the moment a more direct threat than Jones. You know, there have been times in Isaiah Jones's development when he's been really direct and a dribbler and able to offer that kind of threat and ask those kind of questions. At the moment, he hasn't really been playing like that, whereas Doak clearly is. You know, he gets the ball. His first thought is, right, can I take my man on? What can I do with it? We saw a lot of that in the Stoke game. Slightly less probably against West Brom, but that was really just the quality of the opposition. But even then, he was a real threat when he got the opportunity to break. Second half, he had one moment when he made a great run on the wrong side of the fullback and had a shot that was saved. I think he's undoubtedly added a new dimension to Boro's attack. McGree on the left-hand side just looks really solid, doesn't he? Whereas, you know, whoever had been tried out there felt a little bit like square pegs in round holes, especially when it was Azaz out there. You know, that's not McGree. That is McGree's position. He knows exactly what he's doing there. He gets forward and creates a threat. He's very comfortable on the ball, but he's also solid defensively when Boro need that bit of help in there. So I think his introductions helped. That's obviously had the knock-on effect of allowing Azaz to move inside with Conway being injured. I think Conway has done well when he's been in the side, don't get me wrong, but I think if you're playing Azaz, he's got to play as a number 10 because that's his position. We've seen that now. He's not a wide player on the left. So he's back where he wants to be, which has definitely made made an impression. And then, I think in the last couple of games as well, we're just seeing the continued development of the Hackney-Morris midfield axis, which, was always going to need a little bit of time. You're throwing two people together there who never obviously previously played together. I thought they were really good against West Brom. I thought that was where Boro won the game, that they just completely controlled that central midfield area. And while there were some really good individual players, there were flashes of real brilliance, both defensively and in attack. For me, my main takeaway from the Hawthorns on Tuesday night was just the level of control that Boro had in a game against a side who, I do think are going to be one of their promotion rivals come the end of the season. And that, on another day, Boro don't necessarily get that goal. It maybe finishes 0-0. On another day, they have a defensive lapse and they lose, but that didn't happen. And the level of control that they had over it, regardless of the final outcome, I think is really, really positive, because that's going to be, I think, this Boro side at the best. They're just going to get hold of the game really early and be the team that's dictating it.
We talked about Hackney last week on the back of that Sunderland game, and both said then we felt there was an overreaction to the Sunderland performance. He was probably one of his worst performances in a Boro shirt in that Sunderland game. But I don't think that was a reflection of the way it started the season. What a way to bounce back from that performance, though, because I know obviously the goal gets the headlines and gets the attention after the Stoke game, but I thought that was an excellent midfield performance. He was so positive. The amount of times he broke through the lines in the first half, and just that immediate thought when he gets the ball, drive forward, then pick the pass, have a shot on goal. Michael Carrick said after the Stoke game that Hackney had set himself the challenge of scoring more goals this season. I think you can see that in the way he's playing. Now, we talked on Tuesday night, didn't he, about how there's a need to find a balance there, and you still need to kind of think of the goodness of the team and your all-round game. But I do think that's been noticeable. And as you say, alongside Morris, who's just been a remarkably consistent in what is his first season in the Championship. Yeah. And I remember when he signed, the kind of word was, we're hugely excited about him. We think he's a great fit for the Championship, but he's played the large bulk of an MLS campaign. There was no rest, really. Now, will that catch up with him as the season goes on? We'll have to wait and see. But I think everyone's been pleasantly surprised, really, at just how quickly he's taken to it. And when you think now of Michael Carrick's strongest team, everyone's fit. Morris is a no-brainer in there, isn't he?
I don't want to blow our own trumpets, but I do think we said, having seen him in pre-season, we're not sure how Morris is necessarily going to get into the team, because at the start of the season, it looked like Howson was nailed on for a starting spot, and maybe would have been had he stayed fit. But I think we both said he looks like the type of player that once he gets in there, he's going to be incredibly hard to dislodge and get out of the team. Well, that's where we're at, isn't it? I mean, like you say, it's already pretty much unthinkable to think of Boro picking their strongest 11 and Morris not being in it as long as he's fit. I do think with both Morris and Hackney, and I think we've seen this slightly in the last two games. I know it's an easy thing to say. I think it helps. I think it helps them. I think it helps Boro as a whole when they're playing against teams who want to play against them. I think we've seen that. We spoke before the Stoke game on the vid, didn't we? What would Stoke do? Would they come and be ultra defensive, haven't seen other teams do that against Boro? Or with the new boss, would they look to be more adventurous? Well, it was probably a little bit of both, but they didn't come and completely shut up shop, did they? And I guess we've seen in midweek with them thumping Portsmouth 6, their boss is wanting them to be a different Stoke, and we'll see signs of that. So that's why he didn't, I think, come and completely shut up shop. But I think that helped Boro. And then, going away to West Brom at home, top of the table at the start, they were always going to try and be on the front foot and look to take on Boro. And they did. And I'm not saying that Boro are a side who want to sit really deep and play rope-a-dope and hit on the break. They're not that. But I do think they're a side who look better when they've got teams who are trying to attack them and there are spaces there then that they can exploit. Because I think that's helped Hackney in the last two games. And instead of him getting the ball and straight away being just faced by two banks of four with a flat back four sat on the edge of the 18-yard box and then defensive midfielders right in front of them, he's had pockets of space to be able to work in both of those games. because he's been coming up against teams that have been committing men forward, and when their moves have broken down, there's been space for both Hackney and Morris to play in, and I think that makes a difference.
And it's easier, I think, especially with Hackney, you're drawn to what he does moving forward, because that is when he's at his best. But you were saying there about how Stoke and West Brom both came to play, and yet Boro conceded just 2 shots on target, 1 in each game. I think the midfield deserves credit for that. Rav van den Berg, that we're going to talk about, clearly makes an immense difference. George Edmondson, who we'll talk about, who I think has enjoyed a really solid start, considering he hadn't played much football before. But first of all, just as a collective, 2 clean sheets, not conceding many chances, clearly not conceding many shots on goal. And yet I think that's gone slightly under the radar.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, I think it probably has. And defensively, Boro were very, very good again on Tuesday night against, like you say, a West Brom side who had been reasonably free scoring up to that point. Only conceded 1 goal, 1 shot on target. Yes, the last 10 or 15 minutes, West Brom started pumping balls into the area. There were a couple of scrambly kind of moments where your heart was in your mouth a little bit. But at no stage did you think that Boro were going to be prized open, really. And I think you're right. I think Morris and Hackney have to take an awful lot of credit for that because, you know, I don't think neither of them are out-and-out attacking midfielders, but I think they're both players who, when the opportunity arises, want to get forward and want to be creative and want to make things happen. So, you know, they've then got to share that defensive responsibility because, you know, yes, Morris is probably the more deep-lying of the two when you look at kind of field positions and where they're lining up. But he's not a classic defensive midfielder in any stretch of the imagination, is he? You know, we're not talking about Claude Makelele or someone.
I knew that was going to be. He's the go-to.
he's the go-to. He's the go-to. Kante, maybe Kante. I could have gone Kante, but I've gone Makelele.
I can see when my little lads in 30 years' time, I'm saying, you know, when you're playing in midfield, just be a bit more Claude Makelele.
Yeah.
He's the go-to.
But he's not that, is he? But
no.
Between the two of them, they've made a pretty good job of sharing that load and making sure that Boro aren't wide open in the defensive midfield areas. And to be fair, they haven't really been all season, have they? When they've been conceding goals, it's not been because they've been wide open up the middle of the pitch. It's been more individual errors and kind of, you know, an odd bit of basic defending that's gone wrong. So I think Hackney and Morris deserve credit for the way that they've worked that out. And obviously the work that's been put in on the training ground by Carrick and the rest of the coaches to ensure that they're not leaving themselves wide open there.
Van den Berg makes a massive difference as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, he was good. He was good on Tuesday night. He's solid, but he just brings that bit of polish and that bit of poise and that bit of assurance, doesn't he? Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. And you're right. You know, Edmondson has done a really good job. He's looked really good since he's come in. Probably better with the ball at his feet than I maybe thought he might be. Matt Clark, you know, as we've said all the way through, has done a really good job. But I think you saw a little bit in that Sunderland game that when you've got probably Clark and Edmondson together, you do just lack that one defender who when Boro are having a lot of the ball in deep line positions, can do something with it or can be that, you know, that little bit more poised and assured on the ball. Well, Van den Berg is certainly that, but he's also a really good defender. I mean, there was one moment on Tuesday night when he clattered into a challenge on the halfway line, got up and was kind of rubbing himself, hobbled around for the next 5 minutes, and you worried a bit about him. But it was a proper crunch and tackle, but a really good one that you know, again, just settles everything down and puts a bit of doubt in the mind of the players you're playing against. You know, for all that we've rightly said that Clark was brilliant and arguably Boro's, you know, player of the season last year, you had a shout. Van den Berg is Boro's best defender, but head and shoulders.
And you talked about the attack to start with when we talked about McGree and Doak. Well, clearly McGree makes a huge difference. We've seen that. It's just the natural balance as well. But I think when you look back on the Sunderland game, the main problem was Boro were just too predictable in attack. It was too one-paced. It was too predictable. Well, Ben Doak against Stoke was anything but. What do you think the plan will be for Doak moving forward? Clearly, he's going to come and want to play, and he's made a big difference. Is he a player now who'll be in the team every week, or will it be horses for courses with him a little bit? Do you think he might have to come in and out, or did he show against West Brom on Tuesday night in a different type of game that he can still absolutely play his part in grinding out a win, in battling to a hard-fought win?
I think it helps that he's got Ayling playing behind him, who is, nobody can be more experienced and have more know-how and know what they're doing in a championship game than Luke Ayling. So I think that will give Michael Carrick the comfort that, do you know what? Give Ben Doak his head. I don't see any reason why at the minute Doak isn't stick on the right-hand side. Now, like you say, I'm sure Isaiah Jones will want to have something to say about that. And Carrick was very quick to praise Jones for the impact that he made when he came on. And to be fair to Jones, having been dropped, his attitude was bang on. He made some important runs. He did a lot of closing down later on when West Brom were trying to throw balls at the box. So, no problems there. But just for what he's given at the minute, I think Doak stays in the team. And as long as his performance levels are where they're at the minute, I don't see any reason why you have to drop him because, yes, he probably doesn't have the defensive capabilities that Jones has. But I think with Ayling, you're not looking at the fullback position and thinking, my goodness, he needs cover. They've got to make sure that they're protecting him. Well, that's not the case with Ayling, is it? So I think you just give Doak his head for the next few weeks and see what kind of form he plays himself into.
The interesting selection point, I think, and it's probably going to be one for after the international break, isn't it? We're recording this on Thursday morning and we're going over to speak to Michael Carrick on Thursday afternoon, so we'll get an update then. But given that Boro are heading for Watford on the back of 2 wins, even if Conway and Clark are close, there's no need for Carrick to rush them back. But Conway and Azaz, it's going to be an interesting one moving forward, isn't it? Because they're very different players in that number 10 role.
Yeah, as you say, you're heading down to Rockcliffe, aren't you, this afternoon? So you'll get an update. Certainly Carrick's immediate post-match when he was asked about player availability seemed to be, I think if anyone was going to have a chance, it was probably Clark. Wow. Don't think we'll see Conway. Force was obviously on the bench at the weekend as well, but Carrick very much saying, look, he's not ready. He needs under 21 games. He needs probably a training ground game during the international break. So my gut feeling will be that Boro will be unchanged at the weekend. Now, but as you say, moving forward, Conway Azaz is an interesting one because they brought Conway in. They've paid a reasonable amount of money for him. They clearly think a lot of him. He's done really well in the games that he's played. But do you play him as a 9 ahead of Latalath? No. Do you play him as a 10 ahead of Finn Azaz? Well, that's been the compromise thus far. But it's really meant you've then had to shoehorn Azaz into a position where he's nowhere near as effective. I think that's going to be really interesting because at the minute, I look at those 2 players and both of them, I really think if you're not playing number 10, you're probably on the bench. And that's going to be a really interesting call, especially if McGree keeps up the levels that he's been shown at the minute on the left-hand side, because then, do you play Azaz on the left? Do you play Conway on the left? Well, I don't think either of them are going to be as good as McGree is there at his best. So, yeah, I think that will be an interesting one.
Watford then on Saturday, and if this was a home game for Boro, you'd probably say Boro were bankers. Watford have been rubbish away so far this season. Got a good hiding at Preston last night, got a good hiding at Norwich a couple of weeks ago. But they're good at home. They're unbeaten at home, 10 points out of 12. They beat Sunderland at home. They've only won 1 out of the last 5. They had that really good start, didn't they? Well, first 3 games. And then they've only won 1 out of the last 5. Couple of questions, really. Are they finding the level, do you think, now? When you think of the start they had, you think, I wasn't expecting that from them this season. Are they finding the level a little bit? But clearly, you look at the home form, it's still a tough place for Boro to go on Saturday.
Yeah, I look at Watford and I look at their performances and the team that they've got, and listen, limited evidence, but we all have to kind of do that with others. Watford, for me, are a mid-table championship team. I'd be very surprised if they finish in the top 6. They're not going to finish in the bottom 3. I think they'll be mid-table. But as you rightly say, they do seem to be a bit of a different beast at Vicarage Road than when they head out on their travels. Sunderland were obviously down there last weekend, having spoken to a couple of people who were at that game. By all accounts, Sunderland did okay. It was quite a tight game. It was a classic kind of championship game that could really have gone either way. Watford won it with a late penalty. I think it's one of those games for Boro, isn't it? If Boro are going to be proper top 2 contenders, then they're going to have to go into the bulk of games like this and do what they did on Tuesday night, which is establish a pretty strong degree of control and dominance relatively early on, be the team that's controlling the game, and then win it by either scoring and not conceding or limiting the mistakes that they make. And if they do give one away, get two at the other end. I think it's that type of game. And Boro have shown on Tuesday and in previous games, clearly under Carrick, they're more than capable of doing that. They're more than good enough to do that. It's what they didn't do on Tuesday night was make the stupid defensive mistake that's cost them in lots of other games. I think Saturday is going to be a game where we're seeing that again. If Boro can avoid that kind of mistake, I think they'll control the game and I think they'll win it. But Watford have shown that they can capitalise on errors. They will have moments in this game playing at home when they're pinning Boro back and asking questions. Is Boro's defence going to be strong enough to hold out? And is the other concentration levels going to be good enough? I think that'll be the deciding factor at the weekend. If Boro can avoid all of that, then I think they win the game.
Yeah, Boro have defended well. It sounds daft, but Boro have defended well on the whole all season, haven't they? Really have they looked kind of wide open, being exposed by. It's been those daft errors you talk about. The Ayling error against Sunderland, the Jones error against Derby, the Clark and Dieng mix-up against Portsmouth, all kind of avoidable goals. And that's why when Carrick was saying, I think after 5 games, we feel we could have won every game. You can see why it didn't feel as outlandish a statement as it might have initially sounded, did it? You can absolutely see why. And then we've seen in the last couple of games when Boro have cut those errors out, they look really solid.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, I think that'll be the key at the weekend, because I think Boro will pick up where they left off on Tuesday night. I think they will. I think they will control long periods of this game. And again, Watford will play against them, which, as we've said earlier in the vid, I think suits Boro. The way that Watford play, the way that they set up, the fact that they've got this good home record, they will look to be on the front foot. They will give Boro plenty of opportunities to create chances. I don't worry about Boro kind of being a threat, and I think Boro score undoubtedly. It's what happens at the other end, and on Tuesday night they got it spot on. Last weekend against Stoke they got it spot on. If they do that again, as I keep saying, I think they'll create enough chances to win the game. It's, are we at a point where we can say now that Boro have largely cut, you're never going to be absolutely error-free, don't get me wrong, but are we at the point where Boro have kind of got that early ring rust out of their system and are now not going to be making those kind of errors as regularly as they were? If we are, then I think they win the game.
The Adlani Guediora derby, he's the prime example of. I remember when he signed and I went over to Rock to speak to him. You might have been there. I can't remember.
I might have been. I think
I
was.
Example of being like lulled in and coming away. Think speaks really well. Like you look at the highlights and what have you.
He'll be a player.
Yeah, it didn't go to plan. Was it Preston? Was it the Preston game where he was randomly brought back in?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was.
So he's playing in Algeria now. I had a quick glance there before I started chuntering on about him. Still playing.
My favourite Vicarage Road memory, very quick one here. First game of the season, I think. COVID. Warnock.
Oh, yes, yeah.
I was there with nobody in the ground. Clearly, COVID. And when Warnock being Warnock, is chuntering all game long in the technical area, and obviously you can hear literally everything that he's saying, because we're in the stand just behind him, socially distanced, whatever, in the press, but there's no one else in there. Or the noise is literally echoing around. You can hear all the shouts and everything. And I always remember in the second half, Johnny Howson's kind of near Warnock, and Johnny and Warnock says to him, Johnny, and he knows everybody can hear what's going on. Johnny, have you ever refereed a game? and Howson just looks at him. He says, "Well, go and get the whistle off him, because he can't bloody do it."
My favourite Warnock memory during that COVID season. I can't remember what the game was, but it was freezing and Christ, like, I realise I'm not going to moan about being cold in stadiums during lockdown because hellfire. We were so lucky to be there, obviously.
Yeah.
But because of the empty boards, the grounds were freezing, weren't they? And I can't remember what game it was, but being at the Riverside, freezing cold, going to like that makeshift press room afterwards, and Warnock took ages to come in. And you remember when he came in? Sorry, lads, I was that cold. I had to have a hot bath to warm myself.
Yeah,
a bath post-match before he came in.
Yeah, well, that's my memory of victories. I think Boro got beat 1-0, didn't it? It might have been 1-1, but I think they got beat.
Yeah. No, wasn't it 1-1? Didn't Bowler equal? Didn't they equalise later on?
I've got it in my stats book here. Let's have a look. It was the first game of the season. Definitely, this is poor, isn't it? This is bad organisation. This.
I'm looking here now.
This is
oh no, that's not it.
There we are. Yeah, they got beat 1-0. I thought they did.
Right.
Yeah, they got beat 1-0.
Was it a late header?
Yes, it was a late goal. Yeah, it was a late goal. I'm pretty certain. Again, there was a refereeing incident / controversy that got Warnock agitated.
You've been lulled in, mate. You've been drawn in by Warnock's post-match moans there.
Yeah, exactly.
You say that about every game, no matter what. There was an incident that got Warnock agitated.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, but no, that was funny. Howson was chuckling away. I tell you, I think he was tickled by it.
Adlani Guediora, Neil Warnock, hot baths after Riverside defeat.
All our yesterdays.
Yeah, let's see what this weekend brings. Well, do subscribe, as we said at the start. Do subscribe to the channel if you've just stumbled across us, or if you're regularly watching, you haven't subscribed. Then do tap that button. We appreciate that. Do get in touch as well if there's anything you want us to discuss. We're going to be back early next week to look back on the Watford game, and in the second week at the international break, we've got a special guest lined up for that, and we will do a Q&A as well, so shout up if there's anything you want us to discuss on that. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Enjoy the game if you're going, safe travels this weekend. If you're following from afar, then obviously keep in touch with the Northern Echo site. We'll have analysis and reaction over the course of the weekend. Take care.